Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this session today, all about how to get started with SASE. Over the past year, there's been a lot of hype around the Secure Access Service Edge, or SASE. And over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to give you a crash course on all things SASE, including the top 5 tips and pitfalls to avoid when coming up with your own strategy. Let's start by talking about some of the trends that have been driving this. The shift towards a more distributed workforce is not something new, but it has accelerated over the past year. Now, most people are working from anywhere, at home, on the go, eventually back in offices, and they're doing it on any device. A recent Gartner survey revealed that 82% of company leaders plan to allow employees to work remotely at least some of the time moving forward. With this shift, the data center is no longer the hub, the user is. And to give them more secure access to work resources and applications, our users now have to almost be treated as a branch of one. With this hybrid work environment becoming the new norm, users are connecting in different ways. More and more companies are adopting a multiple cloud strategy. In fact, 92% of companies report that they've embraced a multi-cloud strategy. And it's not just one or two different clouds. The average company connects to over 20 different cloud services. This adds complexity to what used to be a fairly simple task of connecting the user to the application in the data center. But regardless of the complexity, users still expect a seamless connection to the applications that they're using. And the ways in which users are connecting to their business applications really differs almost daily in this hybrid work environment. With 60% of organizations expecting the majority of applications to be SaaS, IT needs to factor in where the user is coming from and how they're connecting to those apps, which are now all over the place. So how is this impacting the network? This on the left-hand side is how things used to work with network and security. All applications used to be hosted on-prem. Users had to be connected to the corporate network in order to access them and get their work done. And branch offices would tunnel traffic back to the corporate data center over MPLS. And 80% of that traffic was internal, because they were connecting back to those apps in the data center. And all internet traffic was also routed back through there, or access to the internet. And you had that complete security stack, the firewall, secure web gateway, et cetera, was really deployed there within the corporate data center or headquarters. So for years, this was the way that most companies deployed their network architecture, and it allowed you to have this single place for all security on your network. Over the last 5 years, there's been this dramatic increase in internet traffic. You have organizations who have continued to adapt cloud applications and storage and are running more of their workloads in the cloud. And now when you look at the percentage of internet traffic, that is typically higher than the amount of internal traffic that's flowing over the network. And so backhauling all of this traffic through expensive MPLS lines and VPNs doesn't really make sense anymore. More organizations are moving to direct internet access, which exposes them to more threats, because a lot of times what ends up happening is you're bypassing the traditional security protection. So this old centralized approach forces all of the internet traffic through that single stack of security appliances. And that leads to performance problems. It impacts user satisfaction, and it can cause issues with SaaS adoption in many organizations. As a result of these changes, networking and security teams struggle to do a few things. So first of all, it's a challenge to connect users to the applications and data that they need. When you're backhauling everything, there's often a poorer user experience when accessing cloud apps. And most of the time, users don't really like that very much. There's also complexity when you're connecting to multiple cloud providers, and you lack that end-to-end visibility of application performance. If something is running slow, how do you actually pinpoint the cause and fix it quickly? The second thing is, they're struggling to protect against evolving threat vectors. You have gaps in security protection, right? If you're connecting directly to the internet and bypassing the on-prem security, you're not getting the security protection that you need. We often hear a lot of times there's inconsistent policies being enforced across disparate locations because they might be set up by different people and not really centrally managed. And it can also be difficult to verify the identity of users and devices. So all of this is really requiring a new approach to networking and security. And that's where SASE comes in. So SASE was a term that was coined by Gartner back in 2019, and it stands for the Secure Access Service Edge. And it's all about moving security and networking to the cloud and delivering it as a subscription service. Today's cloud-centric world is really what's driving the need for this new architecture. SASE combines networking and security functions in the cloud to deliver secure access to applications anywhere that users are working. And Gartner describes it as 5 core functions, including software-defined wide area network, or SD-WAN, firewall as a service, secure web gateway, cloud access security broker, or CASB, and zero trust network access, or ZTNA. The goal of the SASE model is to consolidate these functions, which were traditionally delivered as siloed point products, into a single consolidated, integrated cloud service. And SASE is really designed to help you, first of all, combine those networking and security functions to deliver secure connectivity as a service. You can connect users seamlessly to the applications and the data that they need to access in any environment from any location. And you can control access and enforce the right security protection anywhere that users work. I like to think of it in terms of the 3 C's, right? Because who doesn't love, using the same letter to kind of remember things, right? So the first C is all about connecting users to the applications and data that they need to access. And that's really done through the SD-WAN piece and remote access. Second, the control part is extending the secure services from the data center to any cloud. So being able to extend that security stack of secure web gateway, CASB, firewall, zero trust, extending that anywhere that users go. And then last is this idea of convergence, that we can bring together networking and security functions to deliver this secure connectivity in a more integrated way as a service. And that's really what SASE is about. Now, there's an opportunity here for network operations and security operations to work better together. NetOps and SecOps often work in silos. It's in part because of the different tool sets and vendors that the teams rely on, and the natural tendency for the groups to work independently. So these silos have really formed over time. But with multiple vendors, you've probably encountered kind of that finger pointing when something goes wrong and it's unclear who's actually accountable. Gartner actually recommends with SASE selecting a single vendor to deliver a SASE solution. And as a result, we'll see more convergence between networking and security teams as we move from the more of a product mindset to more integrated services. So this is a continued evolution of the NOC and the SOC coming together that will drive this stronger collaboration and faster time to resolution. And there are a lot of efficiencies that can be gained by cutting out complexity and these low value admin tasks for IT. So with SASE, you'll really be able to, first of all, improve network and security visibility and control. You'll be able to drive collaboration and resolve issues faster because it's all going to be consolidated together. And then you'll be able to lower costs because you can gain more efficiencies and productivity. So let's take a closer look at the capabilities of a SASE architecture. So first, whether it's remote workers or any fixed locations or any IoT or internet-facing devices, before they connect to the internet or any SaaS, IaaS, public or private apps, they first connect to the cloud edge. And by cloud edge, what I really mean is the boundary between your users and applications that they need to access. That's where SASE is really bringing together these capabilities. On the networking side, by bringing the WAN into the cloud, and I'm not just talking about, bringing a few features there or just managing it in the cloud, but really delivering the WAN from the cloud, you're able to increase performance, right? It can dynamically select the best path across the SD-WAN fabric, including providing high quality of service. It can optimize for SaaS applications. So you're getting the fastest, most secure path and really driving efficiency through the middle mile and more. Then you look at on the security side, it's bringing all of the layers of the security stack together in the cloud. Everything from protecting access to the internet with DNS security and secure web gateway, making sure that users aren't going to malicious or inappropriate sites, securing the use of those cloud apps with CASB, using data loss prevention to protect data that's in motion and data in apps. So especially your most sensitive data, which now feels like it's even more accessible than ever, and bringing that firewall protection in as well, and even being able to protect workloads in the cloud. Then you have the zero trust network access, right? That's all about building continuous trust verification by looking at the actual users, devices, and services that they're accessing, and not just basing it on network locations. So with SASE, you can enable zero trust by verifying the identity of users and the health of their devices before they're allowed to access applications. And you can do it on a per session basis. So constantly looking and evaluating that. Then there's the observability piece that you see at the bottom. And that's important, an important piece to consider, right? In order to deliver the best application performance, you need to be able to remediate and any sort of performance anomalies that happen. And you need to be able to do that very quickly. And to do that, you need to be able to see end to end from the user all the way up to the applications. And when I say observability, I don't just mean getting the visibility, right? But you actually need that actionable intelligence and actionable insights to know how to take action. When you think about the increased reliance that we have on the internet and cloud services, more networks are outside of your ownership and direct control. So you need to be able to ensure that the performance and integrity of that underlying transport, even when you don't actually own the infrastructure or control how service providers route traffic. And you need that complete visibility from the user to the applications over any network or cloud. And you need insight into any performance issues so that you can remediate incidents quickly and maintain that reliable connectivity. All of this together, right? The networking, the security, the observability piece, these are all of the key components of a SASE architecture. Now, let's take a look at what you can actually do with this. There are two major use cases that SASE solves. First, we have secure remote workers, right? This is all about getting this seamless connection to apps and data anywhere that users work, right? Think about opening your laptop and just start working. And then being able to secure access to the internet and cloud apps, right? Not requiring the user to necessarily log into a VPN in order to be protected, but ensuring that they have that constant secure access. And being able to authenticate users and ensure that device health before establishing connection. The second major use case is around securing the edge, right? So whether it's your WAN edge across any location, You want to make sure that you can kind of streamline that connectivity to public and private apps across all of your office locations. You want to be able to provision the SD-WAN fabric across thousands of users and locations, and make sure, again, that you have that secure access to the apps and direct internet access, whatever it is that your users are doing. And really being able to simplify your policy enforcement across all of these different environments so that you can have that consistent, secure protection. So how can this benefit you? It's really all about helping you get back into the driver's seat and gain more control by cutting out the complexity and leveraging the cloud for secure networking. So with SASE, you can deliver, seamless, secure connection experiences that users expect, right? Our users are expected to be easy and simple and fast. And you can, that's what really SASE is about, helping you deliver. You want to be able to move access control back to, closer to where it's needed, right? Moving it closer to the user and the cloud edge, because we know that users are everywhere. They're no longer, it is no longer working the same way that it once did. So we want to be able to safely move that access control there. And then we want to make your organization more agile by leveraging the cloud to remove a lot of the complexity from your infrastructure. And that complexity is going to continue to grow in time if we try to do things the way that we once did. And so it's about coming up with this new approach with SASE to kind of reimagine your infrastructure and security and leverage the cloud to remove a lot of that complexity. And you get that kind of agility as your networking and security really start to interoperate and work even better together. And then converging those resources to gain more efficiencies, especially through an as-a-service model for secure networking. Now I want to share with you 5 tips and also some pitfalls to be aware of and avoid when you're looking at how SASE fits into your organization. So tip number 1, look for a complete integrated architecture. One of the challenges that you'll face is trying to decipher the different SASE solutions from vendors. When you think about the broadest definition of SASE, bringing networking and security together in the cloud, there are a lot of capabilities that could fall into that bucket. So start by focusing on what's important to your organization today and in the future. First, think about what use cases you're trying to solve. I mentioned 2 main use cases earlier, right? Securing remote workers and securing the edge. But break those down into what an ideal state looks like for your company. And it might be a phased approach, broken down by different projects too. Next, you want to consider what capabilities are most important in order for you to solve those use cases, both now and in the future. Like I said before, you'll see some variation in what's available from different vendors in their offerings. So think about what matters most to you and what's going to provide you with the most complete solution. Then think about what the vendor offers today and what their future vision is. SASE is still relatively new, a new market area. So it's important to think about what the vendor's plans are to take it, where they plan to kind of take that in the future. For example, does the vendor have all the capabilities that you're looking for today, but available in separate products? You'll want to understand, how do they plan to bring that all together? Because that's where the real magic of SASE happens, right? When you can bring all of those capabilities together in a single cloud dashboard and then deliver it as a subscription service. Which brings me to some pitfalls to just be aware of and avoid, right? Products from multiple vendors that are brought together with more basic integrations. So you'll want to look for a vision of consolidation of those 5 core functions that I mentioned earlier, right? SD-WAN, firewall, ZTNA, secure web gateway, and CASB. And consolidation is key because even though you may only have, Zero Trust or SD-WAN today, you'll likely need to extend to some other services in the future and move more to the cloud. And according to Gartner, about 5% of enterprises have all 5 of these services from one vendor today. But in the next couple of years, it's predicted that about 20% of enterprises will have those 5 services from one vendor. Even if it's multiple products from a single vendor today, look at how easy it is to actually integrate them together and how they're going to be brought together even more in the future, versus having to always rely on product integrations across multiple vendors, right? That's really where there's this shift happening from kind of best of breed to best of platform. That's really going to drive efficiency for your networking and security teams, particularly as vendors integrate more of these core services together in SASE. On to tip number 2. Consider a flexible consumption model. Over the past year, we've seen huge changes in the way that businesses operate. You need to be able to move with speed and agility and have the flexibility to quickly adapt to changing priorities and be able to scale up and down in different areas when needed. For example, if you look at needing to quickly spin up a new location or have 2,000 remote workers that you have to get set up, what would that look like for you? Beyond technology, think about how the SASE architecture can actually be delivered. Are there flexible delivery models, including usage-based, pay-per-use, or pay-as-you-grow options that are offered? If there's generic hardware that's needed, is that something that can be delivered as a service? With SASE, the goal should be having this instant global coverage with the ability to provision thousands of locations in minutes and be able to scale up and down your level of service, the features that you use, and the number of connections in your service. So tip number 3, not all clouds were created equal. Now, cloud has been a bit of a buzzword in our industry for years now. And when you're considering SASE, it's an important one to consider. It's not just a buzzword. It's something that's very important for you to think about, right? When you think about your network and security infrastructure running in the cloud, it becomes pretty important for that cloud to be rock solid, reliable, and fast. To really look into the cloud infrastructure that's offered, right? Think about how long has the company been running the cloud infrastructure, and what does that track record look like? And when you look at data center locations around the world, don't just look at the sheer number of data centers that they have. What's also important is how well connected they are. So think about how many peering partners does the vendor have? How many peering sessions do they have? That's really how you'll get the fastest connections to sites and applications. It's not just having the data centers, but how well connected are they with those core internet exchange points and those different peering partners. And then you'll want to also consider how are their services architected in the cloud. Is it a cloud native solution, or is it virtual machines that are running in the cloud? Right? A microservices based architecture is one that will enable the service to scale dynamically much better than just relying on virtual machines that are in the cloud. So just another aspect to really keep in mind and dig into as you're looking at solutions. Tip 4 is remembering the importance of security efficacy. Security efficacy is not something that's always factored in by organizations, but it's actually pretty important, right? We just talked about the fact that not all clouds are created equal, and the same goes for the efficacy of your security protection. And while no product out there is 100% effective, you want to make sure that you are stopping as much as possible. And when you're evaluating solutions, consider this as a test criteria. So looking at the security efficacy of different products, or look for third-party comparisons that you can take a look at. As part of this, you should also look into the sources of the threat intelligence. So is it mainly coming from third-party feeds, or does the vendor have their own threat research team? What does that actually look like, and what's delivered in terms of threat intelligence for the product? Another consideration is how the SASE solution ties in to an extended detection and response, or XDR platform. XDR is all about integrating multiple security control points and applying analytics and automation to make detection and response faster and easier. And XDR and SASE actually intersect as SecOps and NetOps and IT ops continuously assess the risk and trust. And it's not just based on context from the network or cloud analytics, but also endpoint security, email security, and more. So when you can tie SASE in with XDR, that just amplifies what you're able to see and how well you're able to respond. And finally, tip number 5, do SASE your way. There's no one-size-fits-all approach for SASE. Every organization has different architectures, different investments, different requirements, different digital transformation plans to consider. So really think about, and look for a vendor who can deliver all of the core SASE components and bridge your journey to SASE from wherever you are. You need to be able to leverage your existing investments and go to the cloud in a manner that's right for you and at your own pace. When you're looking at moving from on-prem to the cloud, it doesn't need to happen overnight. Look for somebody who you can partner with to map out the right approach for you. You may already be on your SASE journey, or you may take time to get there. You need to choose a vendor that can meet you where you are today with a vision that enables this long-term SASE transformation. You may also need to consider a hybrid approach. Maybe your goal is to move everything to the cloud, or you may need to have some locations or regions where you still need some on-prem support. So look for a vendor who can support you in this sort of deployment as well. And then finally, think about investment protection. You've probably already invested quite a bit into your existing infrastructure, and it may take time for you to fully move to a SASE model. Maybe you just refreshed recently, and it may seem a bit difficult to justify another investment to move to the cloud. So look for vendors who can offer you some investment protection there to help you in the transition. And again, as you're ready, be able to move to the cloud at your pace. Now that you've gone through this crash course on SASE, let's talk about some next steps that you can take. So first, in the next week, you should talk with your network and security teams about the role that SASE can play within your organization, and maybe identify some possible use cases to get started. Then as you look at over the next few months, some other things that you want to consider. First of all, the complexity of your current environment. What are some of those major challenges that you're having today, and how can you reduce some of that complexity? Consider how a new approach could simplify your management, improve your security, and provide better scalability for the future. Think about what operational efficiencies you could gain with vendor consolidation and with this move to the cloud. And then start to research what sort of SASE solutions would be best for you and start to develop a project timeline. So with that, we'll now open it up for questions and see what's on your mind.